Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Economics Monday on the IBM TV network. And today we have a very exciting group panelist, an exciting topic to discuss. We're going to be actually discussing China and whether or not the United States is funding China's development and huge growth, soon to become the number one economy in the world. First of all, let's bring our panelists. Hailing from Utah, this person was the former associate dean of the University of South Dakota School of Law. Let's bring in the Honorable Dan Worthington. Dan, welcome to the show. You'll love this topic. China.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing great this morning. China. Okay, a big topic, obviously. This person hails also now from the Dakotas. He's also a CPA and a certified tax coach. Let's bring our CPA, John Power. John, welcome to the show. Welcome back. You've been absent for a while.
Yep.
But you're here. Okay. Now we're going to reach down under. And down under, this is a group of people that maybe also help funding the soon-to-be world's largest economy from Australia. Let's bring our former billion-dollar hedge fund manager, Shaquille Latmire. Shaquille, welcome to the show, mate.
Good morning.
Okay. And then finally, to round out our panelists until the Honorable David Walker arrives, which he will arrive today, the former Comptroller General of the United States. Well, this one person wasn't the former Comptroller General of the U.S. He was actually from Russia, and then he moved over to Canada. He's actually the head of modern investing on the IBM TV channel. Let's bring in Sasha Starr. Do свидания, Sasha. Do свидания. Okay. Or whatever they say in Canada, eh? Which you notice that's what they do in Canada. In other words, it's great to be in Canada, eh? Okay, so here's our topic for today, and you guys should love this one. It deals with our friends in China, and I got a nasty reminder last week about China. When I ordered some goods from China, they delivered them, but they were non-conforming goods. In other words, I ordered these huge animatrons. They sent me these tiny little toys, which I have over here, and I'm not kidding, and they pocketed the difference. It's almost like, haha, you thought you're getting this, and you're getting this. Okay, so China, the real question is, now I'm looking at them and saying, boy, this was a bad deal for me. The real question is this. We have, 80,000 to 250,000 cargo ships trapped offshore coming into the United States. Huge amounts of products being delivered. Is the United States funding China's huge growth and development? In other words, are we the people, along with Australia, I'm not going to exclude them since they've arrived today. And we'll start with you, Dan Worthington. Are we actually the ones helping fund China's rapid growth in the United States, in the world? In other words, where they become the world's largest economy. So, Dan, we'll start with you. We'll put you in the hot seat here. What do you think about the United States? Are we funding China's rapid growth?
Well, no, certainly China needs consumers above and beyond its own people. The United States represents one of the largest consumer economies in the world. And so it stands to reason that because of the trade deals and other things that were done in previous administrations, and China getting best trading partner status earlier by certain other administrations, that gave them a leg up in other developing nations, primarily because the cost to produce goods there was much cheaper. The labor force there worked for much cheaper. And of course, because all the human rights violations would go on there all the time. And so, we're part of the problem. The use of the vast use of consumer goods here and the vast amounts we're spending. The trade deficit with China has been there for years, and it's creating huge imbalances. Of course, now China is also a major investor in U.S. treasuries and other things. So they, in their mind, they're probably helping keeping our economy afloat and keeping the bloated deficits that we incur even becoming more and more bloated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to go to John Power. What are your thoughts about the United States funding China?
I think pretty much echoing what Dan said. I think it's clear that our economy is partially doing that. We're a huge trading partner with China. Um, over the last several decades now, we've been transferring more and more manufacturing type jobs over there, or if not transferring, allowing them to leave here. Um, but I think it's only part of their boom. Obviously, a big part of their boom has been driven by real estate, which they're starting to see some cracks in that wall a little bit. So I think it's a variety of things, but without question, we're a big part of what has driven their economy.
Okay, and now we'll go down under to Shaquille Latmer, who I noticed that in Australia you export a lot of coal to China. Not that I'm going to make you feel guilty. That then in turn pollutes the entire world and drives their economic engine down under. Do you guys feel any guilt or remorse by creating huge climate change down under and also funding what may be the world's largest economy?
Well, I can't speak on behalf of Australia, but I can certainly speak on my behalf. And look, we have to give China coal so that they can produce ridiculous renewable energy sources for Americans to buy. Because Americans won't just buy our coal and do it themselves. They'll get the coal, send it to China, create a solar panel that's not going to save as much energy as was used to create it, ship it across to America. It sits in the ocean for a few months with a supply chain crisis. And then all of a sudden it'll be put on someone's roof somewhere in the interior states of the United States. And then good luck with everything. As for fueling China's growth, China does have a couple of advantages over the United States. It does trade with countries that are trade embargoed by other nations, for example, North Korea. So it is able to interact with other countries. As anybody who saw that movie with Nicolas Cage, I forget the name of it, would know, the top weapons manufacturers and top weapons sellers in the world are the 5 members of the Security Council. Whilst US arms sales into Africa and other parts of the world which are benighted by war has declined significantly, the arms sales from China and Russia have increased and filled that void. So that gives them a lot of political pull around a lot of parts of the world that traditionally Europe and the United States had more diplomatic missions in, such as Africa. China is also making huge inroads aroround the Pacific Islands. With their Belt and Road Initiative, which has been responded to with absolute silence by Australia, the United States, and the normal allies. And I think in the backdrop of seeing manufacturing jobs, something that the United States always prided itself on, and they are becoming uncompetitive because you've got this massive uptick in wages. I saw the other day, someone sent me a picture of McDonald's offering $22 US an hour. To people to get them to come in and make burgers. Well, if that's what they're paying people at McDonald's, heaven help Americans that are trying to sell goods abroad. They're going to just be priced out of the market. So not only is America funding China, but America, for reasons that I cannot fathom, are actively trying to destroy themselves at the same time. So I'm not sure how that's going to play out, but it'll be interesting to see.
Okay, well, it'll also be interesting to hear from Sasha Starr in Canada. Are we the big supporters of China's growth by basically importing all their goods and services, or at least all their goods, and now they're stranded offshore, showing how dependent the United States is on their manufacturing base?
Well, I remember famous saying, it's economy stupid. So if Chinese goods are indeed produced very efficiently, they are of reasonable quality. I'm not saying perfect quality, but reasonable. So you don't throw them in the garbage right away, but you can use them for at least a few days here and there. And they don't cost a lot. In fact, most of them are quite cheap. So that's how it's done. And it's not just China funded by US, it's funded by almost all countries all over the world. And this is coming back to economy. Also, speaking about US and China in particular, I think that both countries are becoming interdependent on each other. US cannot do anything without China. Likewise, China cannot do anything about US. So it's almost like a friends-enemy relationship, and it will remain so for foreseeable future, unless China will surpass US so much that they will just ignore it altogether.
Okay.
Hopefully it's not gonna happen.
We'll bring in Kim Calhoun. What are your thoughts about China, United States being basically funding the growth of China?
I think that we've been doing it and giving them access to all the resources necessary to potentially own the whole world if they want. I mean, currently, right now, if you look, they own majority of the gas and oil that is being produced today. They bought up our pork industry here in the United States. They own a majority of our banking industry. I don't know that we're funding them as much as they have already got access to all of our resources. If we're giving them money, then yeah, we're going to be doing more funding to them to continue to grow bigger and faster than what we're doing ourselves. I think that we need to refocus on what we fund and put the money back into the United States and rebuild the United States. But honestly, they own a majority of the oil industry, which is a resource that we need to have and to sustain. We still need it. We've never brought on the bigger alternative solutions. And by them buying up our pork industry, that's a huge, huge resource for our food. So, I mean, if you take a look at, if you want to sustain in a society, you need what? Food, shelter, resources to maintain those things like gas and oil, electricity. So, I mean, I know that in China, Huawei owns a lot of the world resources in smart grid and things like that. I don't think they've ever been able to access it here in the U.S., but they're a world leader in gaining the resources necessary to continue to grow.
Okay, well, I'm going to give everybody my China story for the day. Okay, so I was in Walmart about a month ago prior to Halloween to go buy an animatron. These are things that move and talk, and it was about 3 feet tall. It was called dancing banjos, like no kidding. Okay, so the thing is, unfortunately, Walmart had sold them out. Of course, it was only $75, and Walmart ended up $79. They sold them out. So I went on the internet to go buy them off the internet. And unfortunately, I went to a Chinese website who had the dancing banjos. They looked just like they did in Walmart, Costco. So I pressed the little button and ordered them. Okay, waiting for my 3 foot animatron to arrive for $79 from China. Here's what they sent me. Here's my dancing banjo. I am not. It's a little plastic doll. It's not an animatron. It's not 3 feet tall. It doesn't speak. It doesn't do anything. It's just this. And that's my Chinese story for today. And it was $79. Now, I would not spend $79 for this. I don't know.
So it's not America. It's not America funding China. It's Nick Palavita with his.
Palavita funding China.
Personally.
Nick Palavita has now officially became tired of funding China. It was Hong Kong of all things. And Hong Kong, oh, poor Hong Kong. They're being ruled by the people in Beijing. Maybe the people in Beijing are stopping practices like this. Here's your little Chinese doll out of Hong Kong. So now we know why the Hong Kong Chinese are rich. Is because people get suckered into them by, like me, I got suckered into it. So from now on in, anything from China has made my suspect list on the internet. In other words, it's from China, no buy. No buy.
I want to add to this. China destroyed their pork farms. They killed all of them. There was a disease that hit them and they are destroyed. Now they own ours, but they also own all of our appliance industry now. And a lot of people are unaware of this, but they didn't go out and change the name. So we think that we're still buying American homemade products. Be careful, because they're not. Like, I know for a fact now that the refrigerator that we buy is from China. and that it leaks Freon into our house because every so many year and a half, 2 years, your Freon's going to be gone. You're going to be replacing whatever needs to be replaced, including the Freon, and this is leaking into our house. They do not know how to make good quality products. They just make products that are cheap and you think affordable, but that's not affordable if it's, that's.
I think Chinese manufacturing has become better over time, and certainly China is no longer one of the world's cheapest places to manufacture. Prior to these massive rates of inflation that you're seeing in the United States, it actually wasn't that much more expensive to manufacture in the United States. And one would argue, and that's certainly what I was arguing when I was in America last, one would actually argue that you actually get better production because of quality issues where the United States would outperform. Now, I won't name the state, but I did go to one state Congress building, and I had to wait for a certain government person for a little while, and I was just wandering around. I think that some of your buildings are quite pretty, and I came across an American flag in an American Congress building, American government building, made in China. I was honestly completely surprised myself when I saw that. I came back to Australia. I was actually telling a friend of mine who was formerly very high up in the Australian armed services, and I went to an Australian army base, and there was an Australian flag made in Bangladesh. Now, I would say that if you can't even clothe your soldiers, fly your own flags, your medications are all manufactured overseas. The bandages, if a soldier gets wounded, is all manufactured overseas. If you can't even look after your own, I don't think you have any right to ask parents in America to sacrifice the lives of their sons and daughters for a country whose flag you can't even make.
Thank you. Woo! Our ammunition's made in other countries too. So
Probably.
Yeah, and the thing is, here's the interesting thing about IBM TV. We can't broadcast into China because we don't have a Chinese partner. So we broadcast in 122 countries, China not one of them, because they won't allow this to go through in China because we don't have a Chinese partner.
But they don't ban us. If people have found a way to play our videos in China, they have not. We are one of few shows and networks they do not ban. So I am.
Really?
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but
we're not banned in China yet.
No.
Really?
Something to work on, Nick.
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, I do, John. I tend to find ways to get banned.
Keep talking.
After today,
I'm going to rechange my thing. China, a great country. Glad to have you here. Just change.
Well, but the thing is, China, I don't know how many people here have been to China. When I've gone there, it's a very clean country. I was actually quite surprised that we tried to tip the cab driver, and he wasn't really that interested in the tips. So, China has its own struggles and its own battles, and I don't think that we should be trying to denigrate China. I think that we should be talking about what we're going to do in Western countries to catch up and to bring jobs back and to increase trade amongst our own countries. Australia and the United States should be trading so much more than what they have been. It just makes sense for us all to increase trade, and that's how we all get wealthy. 30, 40 years ago in America, people were complaining about the Japanese, that, the TVs were being made in Japan, stereo equipment, hi-fi equipment was being made in Japan, etc. Internationalization and globalization of various goods and services is going to happen. But I don't think that you should allow your country to have a vacuum. Right, if you're going to displace workers by having those jobs shipped offshore, you need to replace those jobs with something positive in America. And I don't think that teaching critical race theory or teaching that America's a horrible country and getting everyone to become liberal arts professors is a good way to fill that void.
Well, okay, you say that U.S. and you want to improve U.S.-Australian relationships. Okay, now I know that we have a lot of great stuff we could send to you. We have Boeing airplanes, we have Ford Motor, we have General Motors. Other than coal, which pollutes, what does Australia have to offer us?
Did you see what you guys did with Boeing? You forced us all to buy Airbus because you screwed up the bloody the autopilot system, whatever it was, on the Boeing planes, and they were unsafe to fly. And I would be careful, Nick, because I was always under the impression you had to be a natural-born American citizen to run for American politics. But I found out the other day that Henry Kissinger was not born in the United States. So there might be hope for me yet. You could
Well,
see
yeah,
me
you can. You
around
just
the
can't
White
be a
House.
president. You could be like
Right.
Arnold Schwarzenegger. You could be the governor of California. That would be perfect for you, Shaquille, because
that would suit me. Dan, you'd vote for. I know I'd get the Utah vote. I'm sure that many parts of America would vote me in. I should come over.
Well,
I don't
yeah,
know.
you could be,
I mean,
you
I
could be
think
governor of
anyone can be
California.
anything they want to be in America. You just have to.
You can't be
reach-
president. He can't be
Can't be
president because he
president.
wasn't born in the United States. He's not
He
natural.
can go to Hawaii and get a birth certificate.
Well, yeah.
We need to delete that. Where are censors, please?
It's just another Pacific island. We're all the same. And
That's just my opinion, Nick. That's just my opinion.
We need to delete that. Where are
China,
our
do
government censors?
Come on.
Come on, Nick, be a sport. I was just.
I'm looking for the delete button. We never said that. President Obama. Okay, well, we're going to take all that one back. But
So we've upset China. We've upset the Democrats. We've upset Obama. I think it's a good show so far.
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Yeah, so
I'm
far.
going to run for
Yeah.
American
we
politics.
upset the Chinese.
I violated corporate policy. So,
We-
all
we-
right.
we
So we're
upset
on
the
a roll here
Americans.
today.
We're on a roll today. Yeah, and all we wanted to do was discuss these 250,000. Of course, the media, they threw out different numbers. One day it's 250,000. Now it's only 80,000 in cargo. Then all of a sudden it's not their fault. It's we don't have drivers to pick up their stupid cargo things and deliver them. But at the same time,
It's also, I hear, Americans' fault because they're doing crazy things like trying to buy their kids Christmas presents and, spend money like they've been encouraged to do. Awful Americans buying goods. How dare you?
Terrible.
yeah. Well, the thing is, we're entitled to have
Like
good.
turkey, which you guys have got a shortage for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Hams, you've got a shortage of. Just groceries in general, fresh fruit,
Bacon.
vegetables. I mean, how dare Americans try to eat?
Yeah, that's true. In other words, we do deserve the best. I mean, there's just no question about it. That the best in the world belongs here in the United States of
But
America.
we're not going to be
Just ask
short
us.
on funds
There
with
we
the
go, John.
$1 trillion, right? We're certainly going to, with the new, I guess, program that's going to be coming forward, we're going to definitely have the money to hopefully put forward into new jobs, new opportunities, and to maintain some of the things that have fallen behind due to our pandemic situation that we had.
Yeah. Well,
So, Kim, actually, I was looking at this because I thought there would be a political play here. I really did. I thought something's not right. Okay. And I looked up one little thing. I was watching an interview, and there was a Republican from New York who voted for it, and he was being attacked by other Republicans for it. And he made a comment that I went, really? 120 billion of the 1.2 trillion, so that's 10% of it, is going to New York, a Democrat-run state. Now, I know the roads are terrible in New York because I've driven them. I drove all the way up to Long Island, and it was the worst road I've ever driven on in any Western country ever. It was appalling. Now I understood why Americans have all these big SUVs, because you've got it. The potholes were just. We were at an Audi sedan, and anyway, it doesn't matter. So here you are giving disproportionate amounts of money to blue states and only a little bit to red states. And let's not forget that not all of that money is going for actual infrastructure. But even if it was, $1 trillion, if it was spent over 4 years, is $250 billion a year. That's kind of what you'd expect for the federal government to do, isn't it? To spend that money. So it's not really a substantial increase.
It's just pocket change. But let's bring in our favorite speaker from Washington, not the Washington, D.C. area. He doesn't live in Washington, D.C. He's the former Comptroller General of the United States of America. Let's bring in the Honorable David M. Walker. David, please welcome to the show.
Good to be with you, Nick. Glad it worked out.
Question that we have today that we're discussing is China. Okay, we noticed that there's like 250,000 cargo ships like offshore not getting into our ports. Has the United States become that dependent on China that we bring in all our goods from China to come to the United States? We just don't manufacture anything anymore. And aren't we funding China? Are we the ones responsible for funding China, making them soon to be the world's largest economy?
Well, first, I don't think we have 250,000 ships offshore, but we have a record number of ships offshore. Secondly, Yes, I mean, we're helping to enable China. There's no question about that. China has got, it's attractive from a cost standpoint. They've got much lower wages than the United States. In addition to that, they have much laxer environmental and labor regulations, among other things. And so therefore, you can produce goods a lot cheaper in China than you can in the United States. You have many corporations that have operations in China. People forget that while corporations care about the country they're based in, they have a legal and fiduciary responsibility to look out for the interest of the shareholders. And so there was a rush to offshore a number of years ago because of the cost structure. You also have to keep in mind that many enterprises in China are state-owned or state-controlled, which is very different from the United States, where most of our economy is based upon private enterprises, whether it's public companies, private companies, or individual proprietorships, if you will. And I think now with some of the supply chain challenges that we're experiencing, and with some of the national security concerns that we have with regard to China, you may find some people rethinking some of this, but it's not going to happen overnight.
Mm-hmm. Is there a way that
we're dependent on China for some strategically important materials, including rare earth metals, which are critically important with regard to certain weapon systems? And so, we clearly have a vulnerability that we need to do a better job of managing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, has the United States even addressed the problem of our dependency on China? In other words, our money is flowing, looks like, in that direction with very little coming back to us. And our manufacturing is sent that direction with very little being built here. Isn't Congress concerned about this at all? Or is everybody in Washington, D.C. asleep at the wheel as they spend time on climate change and critical race theory, and in the meantime, destroying our economy by shipping it off to China?
Just to be fair, though, Nick, trade is a two-way street, and China is also a huge importer of things like agricultural products.
That's true. There's no question. We have a huge negative balance of payments with China, but you're right. I mean, we are self-sufficient on food. China is not self-sufficient on food. We could be self-sufficient on energy, and in fact, we're self-sufficient on energy until about 10 months ago. China is not self-sufficient on energy, and one of the reasons that China has invested heavily in Iran and actually has troops deployed in Iran to protect their investment is because of their dependence on foreign oil. Frankly, one of the things that we need to do is we need to get back to being energy independent. We wouldn't have some of the problems we're having right now, at the gas pump.
Or we could just ask Russia and Saudi Arabia to pump more oil.
Yeah, well, why would they do that?
Yeah, but
when we have massive reserves in the United States,
they were asking us not to pump as much. They were asking us not to pump as much, and now all of a sudden, and we said no, and now we expect them to say yes when we ask them to do something. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm just going to say, so I do have an I'm with her shirt. I collect political memorabilia wherever I go, but during the last election when I was in the United States, I was fascinated to find the Make in America Great Again shirts. So I know there's a lot of Republicans here, so I'm going to have a little go at Donald Trump, because there's the shirt, right? Make America Great Again. He talked about bringing all these jobs back to America, and where is it made?
Mexico.
So I really think that is quite fitting for what's going on in America. And let's talk about more serious issues than textiles. At the moment, the world's entire supply of penicillin comes from 4 companies. There's one company in Austria that produces a little bit, and the other 3 companies are in China. Whenever there is a geographic issue that affects China, they've got a storm or an earthquake or something like that, the world's supply of penicillin becomes very, very short and prices skyrocket. Why? Why are we not manufacturing penicillin anywhere else in the world but China? This just makes no sense. And it's like that with bandages. It's like that with medical equipment. It's like that with so many different things. And, years ago, there was stuff being manufactured in Korea where they were paying their workers more than what they were earning in Australia, in England, in the United States. and yet the jobs were offshored anyway. So it's not just a cost issue. Sometimes these things are just being moved offshore for the sake of it, and we really got to start encouraging more investment in our own countries.
Yeah.
Well, the truth is that Congress does a lousy job of long range issues. They are focused on the here and now. The United States still does not have a long range strategic plan. Individual agencies are required to have strategic plans, but the consolidated United States government does not. This is clearly an economic and national security issue of significant importance. And one would think that the executive branch first, with the encouragement and oversight of the Congress, would be focused on it. But such is not the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and why isn't that the case, though, Dave? Also, I noticed your shirt doesn't say Make America Great Again. You have the A on it. What is your relationship with Alabama? I have to ask.
I was born in Alabama, and we have a pretty good football team down there.
Yeah, I noticed that. I went to the University. I went to the University of Miami, so I'm totally familiar with Alabama.
You used to have a good team.
Yeah, we used to have a good team.
And my brothers both went to Florida State, who was at Miami this week.
I noticed that.
Last thing on this is, when I was a kid, literally about the only thing good in Alabama was Alabama football.
Right.
And I used to sell programs at Alabama games. So yes, I admit I'm guilty. I am a Roll Tide fan.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was such a Miami fan. I actually sold Cokes at the Orange Bowl at the University of Miami games, and I made more doing that than clerking as a law clerk, because you could make back then you could make like $30 an hour, literally selling Cokes. Because think about it, the Orange Bowl; it's real hot. They fly off the shelves. You just give people Cokes all the time, and you got a commission on it. You go crunch the law stuff. You don't get paid as much.
And when I was in high school, I worked for the Miami Dolphins.
Oh, really?
I lived with them in the summer.
Okay.
I traveled with them some.
Right.
Needless to say, I was at every home game, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, yeah. If you went to the home games, it is really really hot. Now, also, like I said, a really hot topic. I think I noticed that your friend Joe Biden got on an airplane and took his huge airplane over to Glasgow, and they sat and pontificated about climate change for weeks. When we all know that Australia, where Shaquille is, imports huge amounts of coal up to China, and they just burn it and destroy the economy and with reckless the ecology with reckless abandon. Yet, why is it that rather than do all that waste of time, why don't they have a summit on how we're going to deal with China? Because other than that, Dave, in your book, a great book, America still a superpower in 2040? Good question. Is China going to be the superpower in 2040? Bring that book
Well,
back.
let's talk about some stats right now, okay? It takes four things to be, in my opinion, as noted in the book, to be a global superpower. Number one, you have to have global economic influence. Secondly, you have to have global diplomatic influence. Thirdly, you have to have global military capabilities. And fourthly, you have to have cultural influence around the world. Let's look at the data. The United States is number one on GDP, but adjusted for purchasing power parity, China has already passed us. They passed us several years ago, and they're going to end up passing us on nominal GDP within the next 10, 15 years. Secondly, with regard to diplomatic capabilities, China now has more embassies than we do around the world. Number three, with regard to military capabilities, depending upon how you rank, they're either number two or number three, growing rapidly. They equal us in Asia, and we still have more capabilities in other parts of the world, but they're dedicated to passing us. And with regard to cultural, they're increasing, and believe it or not, they own the largest movie chain in the United States, which is part of their strategy to be able to distribute information to Americans that is favorable to, with regard to China. So they have a long-range strategic plan. They execute on it. They're a lot more disciplined and patient than we are, and they don't have a board of directors of 535 politicians.
Right, they were very efficient. And for those who haven't got this book, here it is, America 2040, Still a Superpower, by the Honorable David M. Walker, who's here on our show. If you haven't, you need to order this. You can buy this in the United States. I did have to check, Dave. I'm sorry. I wanted to check to see where it was printed. And actually, at the back here, it does say, I have all my notes in here, printed in the USA, baby. This was printed in the USA because I was afraid it's going to say printed in China.
No. It's on demand printing. You have to order it online. It's all U.S., baby. It's all
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought. I said I was going. Okay, here we go. We can manufacture books. American 2040, still a superpower.
I did say
once before
that Dave will be Dave's the kind of person that will save America and save the Western world from the calamity that we're in. I want to talk about what you said there about their diplomatic missions and the things that they're doing around the world. The Belt and Road Initiative is an absolutely fantastic thing for China to do. Let's not forget that they're overflowing with money from all over the world, and countries do a poor job. Australia, for example, we have a shortage. It's been going on like this for years of baby formula, powdered milk products. And so what we did in our wisdom is we didn't decide to build a new processing center so that we could keep up with demand from Chinese buyers that want our milk products, because we have a very good dairy industry in Australia and New Zealand. So what did the Chinese eventually do? They started buying dairy farms in Australia because we wouldn't sell them our milk. It's that sort of silliness that goes on. Now, they're building, and they're spending trillions of dollars on the Belt and Road Initiative. America wants to spend trillions of dollars on climate change and race theories. So, if you spend trillions of dollars shoring up trade routes across the world, that has always been the thing that has built wealth. If you go back to the dawn of human civilization, that has been the thing that has built wealth. A lot of people think the Middle East have become wealthy because of oil. They became much more wealthy because of oil. But they were major trade routes for spices and things like that going back hundreds of years. So that is a really easy way to do it. Hong Kong became very wealthy because of trade. Singapore became very wealthy because of trade. There isn't really anything in Singapore. There isn't really anything great about Hong Kong. The barren island, but they've built something amazing in Hong Kong. They've built something amazing in Singapore. And if we start to invest in things that matter like that, then, hey, we're going to do really well. And Nick, maybe America could start buying Australia's coal.
Okay, Joe Manchin. He's got plenty in West Virginia he's trying to sell.
Yeah, we've got plenty of coal here in West Virginia. We don't need Australian coal.
Yeah, but you've got plenty of oil in America as well. You've got more oil in America than all of the Middle East.
Since you're so cozy. Hey, Australia, you guys are so cozy to China. Tell us a little bit more about this Belt and Road Initiative. What's going on here? Tell the audience what that is.
So the Belt and Road Initiative is a multi-trillion-dollar investment that China is making, building ports and the infrastructure to go with those ports in countries all over the world to increase two-way trade between China and those countries. A fantastic opportunity for China to be able to sell its products, fantastic opportunity for China to be able to buy its products. And of course, all of these countries are going to have an economic reliance on China. Because if you go into a small Pacific island and you spend billions and billions of dollars and you employ lots and lots of people, guess what? Whichever government is running the place is going to want you. They're going to look after you. They're going to look after those interests. And there's nobody else competing with China for those interests. Australia isn't building any ports with its neighboring countries. Why not? America's not building any ports with all the islands in the Caribbean. Why not? There are so many opportunities for us to do that.
We'll have to ask the Honorable David M. Walker. I mean, are we asleep at the wheel here on this Belt and Road Initiative in the U.S.?
Yeah. The Belt and Road Initiative is a key part of China's long-range strategic plan. It has economic, diplomatic, military, and cultural implications. It goes overland all the way to Europe. It's via the sea. It is a strategic initiative. China ends up providing low-cost financing. China ends up providing the labor that builds most of these facilities. In many cases, the countries that benefit it can't maintain the payments, and China ultimately takes control of the facilities. It's a way for them to also be able to have ports in strategic parts of the world. You ought to Google it, look it up. It is a brilliant initiative. Not without its challenges, but it is a brilliant initiative.
Okay,
Is there any reason America and its allies can't spend the similar sorts of money? You've entered into a new trade deal with Australia, the UK, and the United States. Fantastic deal that should benefit all three countries. Why isn't a deal like that, especially with the UK post Brexit? Why isn't a deal like that being done, where we are going to spend that sort of money, not because we're trying to hurt China. China isn't doing anything wrong. They're acting in their own self-interest. It makes perfect sense for them to do that. The question is, why are we not? Is it not in our self-interest to increase trade with all these countries?
Because the biggest deficit in this country is a leadership deficit.
Let's spend $4 trillion dealing with issues like racist trades.
Well, look, I mean, personally, I'm for the infrastructure bill that's going to be signed today because, at least most of it deals with hard infrastructure, not all of it, okay? But the next so-called human infrastructure bill is nothing more than an expansion of the government and increasing in welfare programs, adding more mandatory spending, and in my view, would exacerbate our challenges, including our inflation challenges, and should be defeated, and hopefully it will be.
Yeah, but what about the U.S. strategic plan? What is our long-term plan? What have they developed in Washington, D.C., David, when it comes to long-term strategic plan? I know you outline in your whole book all the way to 2040. What is the United States government? What's their plan?
It's going to take me about a nanosecond to explain it because it doesn't exist. All right. The closest thing that the United States had to a strategic plan and still has to a strategic plan was the plan that we put together at GAO that looked longer, broader, and in a more integrated fashion to the challenges facing the United States and its position in the world. As I said, there's something called the Government Performance and Results Act that requires individual departments and agencies to have plans, strategic plans that have to be updated periodically. But there's nothing that requires a consolidated plan for the U.S. government. And the agency that does probably the best job here is the Defense Department, because we have a national security strategy. We have a national military strategy. Interestingly, we don't have an integrated strategy that's both operational and business side, which is I'm working on as part of the Defense Business Board. But the consolidated U.S. government doesn't have one, and that is a tremendous disadvantage. And it needs to that void needs to be filled.
Dave, can I ask you something though? Let's say that you became we wave a magic wand. You'll be 74 in the 2024 election, so you're of the right age, right?
You're young.
We wave a magic. You'll be young for the job, actually. We wave a magic wand. You become the president of the United States. I can be that Secretary of State then. See, so we're running the place. But what would you do? Because the executive branch only has so much power. So even if you had a really charismatic leader who president, he's only there for a maximum of 8 years, or she is only there for a maximum of 8 years. What are you going to do? Congress itself is really dysfunctional. And, unfortunately, the only time that you see Republicans and Democrats actually agree on anything is when they're going to spend the American taxpayers' money. So, how do you actually get efficiency into a system that's sort of designed not to be efficient and not responsive?
There's only one person elected by all the people of the United States who choose to vote, and that's the president of the United States. The vice president's a tag along, and you run as a ticket. So the president's the only person that is elected by all the people. The president is not just commander in chief of the military. The president is the chief executive officer of the United States government. The president has to make this priority one. The president has to take the lead. The president has the bully pulpit. Congress is a committee of politicians, many of which don't have relevant experience other than political experience. You can't run a country by committee. And so it starts at the top, and the top is the president. And don't underestimate how much a president can get done. I mean, I've had the good fortune of working, during a number of presidential administrations, and I'll give one example. I mean, President Reagan was a very effective president. He had a short list of priorities. He had certain principles and values that guided all his decisions. He hired top flight people. He delegated. He held them accountable. He was an excellent communicator, and a tremendous amount was accomplished. And it can be again.
But he also had a significant lead. I mean, the electors, I think in his second election, didn't he win everything except for Washington, D.C.? So
that was on the re-election. That was on the re-election.
But the first one, he had 430 or 440 electors. When it's much closer, like it is with Biden and even with Trump, it wasn't huge. With George Bush, it wasn't a huge margin of victory. Either election under him. Does that make it little bit more difficult, because you actually need to first and foremost make sure that your party votes along with what you want, which is what Biden's struggling with at the moment, and then hopefully get a little bit of crossbench support or a little bit of
Here's my view. Obviously, to the extent that that the margins are close in Congress, it complicates things, especially with regard to the Senate and the filibuster. But keep in mind there are certain things that need to be done that can be done through budget reconciliation, which can't be filibustered. Like, for example, putting our finances in order. The other thing is that Washington tends to try to come up with solutions that are baked in Washington, and then they go out and try to sell it. That's exactly the wrong way. You need to figure out what the problem is. You need to engage the American people using all forms of media to try to engage them, to help them understand the situation, to solicit their input, and then you have to come up with proposals, and then you sell the proposal. That's not how Washington has worked, and it's one of the reasons that it's been so ineffective.
Well, I want to add to that, David, when you say that most of it's home baked in Washington, but they don't really even beta test their ideas, as well as going out and finding out what the real problems are from our public, getting feedback, maybe potentially finding some other solutions. But they just push their own agenda, their own solutions and ideas without even testing them out to find out if they really will work or if they're really for the people that need it. So, I mean, I agree with you. And Shaq, in your world, I've always felt like David would make a great leader for this country, because he's not for either party. He's for the people, and he always has been. And he's for one thing that I truly support. We need to put a budget. We need to get a budget on our country and an understanding of how we're not just making money, but how we're spending it, what we're using it for. And I truly believe that David and people like David have this skill set, but they have the ethics to back it. So I like your idea. So.
Well, thank you. And let me just say one last thing on this and open it back up. I had a hypothesis in 2012 that the American people are a lot smarter than the politicians realized, and that they could be part of the solution to how we end up putting our finances in order. And that's why I did the 10,000-mile, 27-state national fiscal responsibility bus tour. And the bottom line is we got 77 to 97% agreement on specific reforms crossing spending, mandatory discretionary taxes, et cetera, that would accomplish the goal of getting debt to GDP down to a reasonable and sustainable level by a date certain. That's the approach you have to take to these difficult issues. And that's not the approach that historically has been taken. And it wasn't the approach that was taken by the quote unquote Simpson-Bowles Commission, which was trying to help deal with this issue, but unfortunately was not successful.
Yeah, well, it's been. I don't think it's not successful. It's just on hold for right now, because these issues aren't going to go away, and these issues are still out there. Social Security insolvent in 2034. The Long Range Planning Committee should be dealing with that. Even in my homeowners association, where I sit on the board, we actually have a Long Range Planning Committee. I mean, David, and we're just only 450 homes. That's ridiculous. Here you have the United States of America, and it doesn't have a long-range planning committee, no long-range planning. And this one isn't even long-range. Medicare insolvent in 2026. This stuff needs to be addressed like now, not to say that climate change isn't important, but let's get real. Climate change is, when is it? It's 70 years away or something crazy like that. In other words, it's way out in the future.
That's a theory.
Right on the street.
That's a theory. I mean, how many times do you listen to the weather report? It tells you it's going to rain. You carry an umbrella, it doesn't rain. If they can't get the weather right today, what chance do they got of predicting the weather in 70 years from now? I mean, what about even the greater things like like what's going on with the sun and solar bursts and all that sort of stuff? I mean, this is just not sustainable. In relation to having a budget, I think that's a good idea because then you can actually allocate money in proportion to what's the most important instead of it just being an unlimited check. And that tour that you did, Dave, I seem to recall it was the $10 billion a minute tour. So just think about that. The US government is on your behalf spending $10 million a minute, every minute of every day on your behalf. Do you think you're better off because of it? Because I can guarantee you, if the government was to take the $4 or $5 trillion a year that it spends, divide it by 365 million or 350 million people, whatever you have, and just give you the money, I'm pretty sure most people would be better off.
Well, let me clarify what the 10 million a minute related to. The 10 million a minute related to that's how fast our liabilities and unfunded promises for Social Security and Medicare and other social insurance programs were growing. 10 million a minute. So that's the hole. The hole was getting deeper. 10 million a minute.
Well, if you divide 4.5, I've gone with 4.5 trillion. If you divide that by 365 by 24 and then divide that by 60, you get the same figure. So the government is spending 10 million a minute. It's putting itself another $10 million in debt. So there's $20 million a minute being spent. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, to answer Mark Lee's question that came up there before, yes, I think private enterprise would do a much better job. Because if you employed private enterprise to do the job of government and they weren't doing it very well, they would lose their contract. In America, they get a bigger budget. Not just America, most countries. The politicians get a bigger budget.
I'm 70 years old. The Congress has passed a budget and timely appropriations bills, meaning all the appropriations bills, by the beginning of the fiscal year, which is 10-1, 4 times. 4 times in 70 years. That's an F minus.
Yeah. So you at the Naval Academy, you would not give them a high grade. Then it sounds like.
Yeah.
He flunked them. They flunked, Nick.
How many times in?
They flunked badly.
I'll be fair because before China really went on its growth spurt, how many times in the last 70 years has China had a budget deficit anywhere near what America has had, or Australia, or the UK, or whatever? How many times have they had that sort of a budget deficit? Probably never.
I don't recall. From what I understand, they buy our debt, but I don't know if they're
that's
too much.
The balance of payments. That's because of the balance of payments. It's one of the reasons they buy it. And,
right. So
by the way, they've curbed their appetite for our debt. Japan has now passed China as the largest holder of our foreign debt.
Right.
And the biggest buyer of our debt now is the Federal Reserve. We are self-dealing in our own debt.
Okay. So what happens is that's ridiculous.
How does that get dealt with? Because this was a problem that they talked about back in the 50s. They were always worried that the Reserve would buy all the Treasury bonds and it would just become a self-perpetuating cycle. That's not sustainable because fiat currency, at least people say it's got no value. At least the value is it can be used to pay off government debt, so the banks can always accept it, and then you can extinguish debt with it. What happens in this situation if this goes on for too long? What happens?
Well, what happens, among other things, is that people lose confidence in the dollar, and there's a flight from the dollar, which has serious adverse consequences from an economic, from a variety of perspectives. Obviously, to the extent that the Fed is going to continue to try to monetize the debt, that's obviously going to have an adverse impact with regard to inflation as well. You said the right thing. You can do this in the short term to deal with the crisis. And the Fed did it in 2007, 2008 to deal with the financial crisis, not nearly to the scale that it's done it recently. And it's done it in the last couple of years because of COVID. But you got people here in the United States now, advocating for the modern monetary theory, which says deficits and debt don't matter as long as you can borrow in your own reserve currency and monetize the problem until you have an inflation problem. Newsflash, we're having an inflation problem.
Yeah, I'm wondering when hyperinflation is going to take over, but unfortunately, we're going to have to get going. We do want to thank our viewers on LinkedIn, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube for watching Economics Monday, not just in the United States, but around the world. And the Honorable David M. Walker, thank you for making your appearance, and hopefully we will be able to see everybody here next week on the IBM TV network. We'll see you all next week.
Everybody, take care.
All right, thank
Take
you. All right,
care.
bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.